Alright, so I had a few people request that I do a video showing how I color in the butterfly that I use so very often on my cards. This is just one example. So I thought I'd go ahead and show you the techniques that I use when I color with my Copics. Just as a disclaimer, I've never taken a Copics class. I'd love to, but they don't really seem to offer them in my area that often. But as soon as they do, I definitely want to take one. This is just stuff I've picked up from watching other people's videos, books, reading other blogs, and just a lot of practice myself. My husband thinks it's hysterical that I'm 27 years old and I like to sit around and color, but I actually find it really relaxing, and it's fun just to play around with shading and trying to get lighting and things like that, so I do enjoy it. So first thing, I already went ahead and stamped my butterfly in the Memento Tuxedo Black, which is my preferred ink for using Copics. I know some people actually will use StazOn, but that's not what I use. And then the next thing was I went ahead and picked, I think I'm using the same colors that I did for that other card, but I'm not 100%. I went ahead and picked out my three Copics that I was going to use. So I went with B32, 34, and 37. So they're just a few values apart from each other. I'm not going to go into, obviously, how you pick Copics, like pick the different values or anything like that, but I will try to link, if I remember, to a page that tells you all about Copics, just kind of the basics, what they are, how you can choose different colors, things like that. So if you have any questions, hopefully that link will help you, or you can comment or email me and I will get back to you. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you what I would do. Obviously there are many different approaches to using Copics, and so mine is not the only one by any means. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. You always, well, at least I always start with the lightest color first, which is B32. And I know there are, I guess, two basic approaches to coloring in. You can do little circles or little brush strokes. And I actually use a combination of both when I color, just depending on the look I want to get and the stamp that I'm using. So I'm actually only going to do like a quarter or a half of the butterfly, just for the sake of time. So whenever I use my base color, the lightest shade, I go ahead and I actually do use the tiny circles. I just find that I get a much better first coat of color, and it gets really saturated, which is what you definitely want to use. So it takes a little bit of time, so I'm just going to do a quarter of this wing. I'll do this top part of the wing. And I just go back and forth doing real tiny circles with just the tip of my marker, because when you use Copics, you want it to be pretty saturated with color so that when you go and start layering with darker shades, you get really nice, even blending. So it does take a little bit of time, but I find that when I rush to do this initial, say coat of color, it just doesn't look as nice. Another tip that I picked up was that when you do this first coat, to get a nice, smooth, even color, it's good to do the tiny circles and to go back and forth across the same front like I'm doing. So I didn't skip all over the butterfly, back and forth. I just kept going back and forth along the same line, and that helps too to get a nice even color. And then when you use your Copics, you always want to flip it over, and you actually want your paper to look saturated like this. Some people might freak out and think, oh my god, I used too much, but when you use your Copics, you actually want the paper to be completely saturated with color. This way you got a good base coat. You want it also the saturation to be nice and even, and it's going to allow for other colors to blend really nicely. They also recommend, if you're doing a larger image, even like this butterfly, when I color it, I usually do work in like quarters, so I'll split it into the 4 different sections of wings, because if I started here and did that, by the time I got to the bottom over here, this would probably have started to dry, and then I might not get a nice color as nice of a color as I would if I work in smaller sections. So I did my first base coat, and I'm really happy with how even it came out, and the paper is all saturated, so I know that it's good to move on to the second color. So with the first butterfly, I actually went ahead and did the shading and stuff. I outlined each little section, but I wanted to try something different, so I'm going to work and try something new, so hopefully it'll work. So the next one is B34. This is the second darkest shade, and I'm going to switch from doing the small circles to the like broader brush strokes. So I'm just going to start on the inside, and I'm going to work my way out. I'm just going to do pretty broad brush strokes, and what you want to do is you want to start with a, not a firm push, but you want to start with like dark color and just kind of fan it out like that, so it kind of naturally fades on its own. So I'm just going to start in the middle, and I'm just going to go as I see fit, like what I would think would look good with the shading. And I'm going to do some broad brush strokes, and you're probably looking at it now and thinking like, that looks terrible. But you'll see when I go back and start coloring it in and shading, it'll look better. And then I'm actually going to do the same thing, and I'm going to come in from the edge of the wing too. And hopefully this will look nice, but it might not, so. Alright. The next thing, and this is where you really want to start blending your colors, I go back with B32, and right along the edge of where I just did that more medium shade and the light shade, I'm going to go right along the edge of the two, and do the brush strokes again, just to kind of try to blend those two colors together a little more nicely. Because right now you can really see it's very well defined, the medium shade. So I'm going to try and blend it a little bit more to make it look more smooth. So I'm just going to go back and just over where the two colors meet, I'm going to go back in with this lighter shade and just start blending it. Alright, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to go in with my darkest shade, which is the B37. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did with that medium shade. I'm just going to start in the center and start like fanning out. Not quite as far as I went with the medium shade, because I just want that dark color to be really concentrated on the inside, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the outer wing. We'll see how this turns out. Hopefully nice. And then I'm going to go back. It does take a little bit of time if you do it like this. With B34, and the same thing, right along where I just did that darkest color and where the lighter shades are, I'm going to go right along and just kind of try and blend it. And I'll flip it around to the other edge. And then the last step is I'm going to go back with my very lightest shade, the B32, and just blend it again. So that's that. And as you can see, I clearly went over the edge of the butterfly, which is fine because I'm actually just going to end up cutting this out when I put it on a card, so I'm not really concerned about staying within the lines. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and color in the rest of the butterfly, doing the same thing, and once it's dried and I cut it out, I'll take a picture of it and show it to you. And what I also like to do real quick, I'll show you. Oh, of course, where is it? Here we go. So on this butterfly here, for these little dots, let me see if I can show you, the little dots on the wings, I usually like to add something, maybe little rhinestones, pearls. On this one, I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but I did some, stickles just to add a little bit of glitter to it. But I also like to take my white my favorite white pen, this Signo Uniball white pen, and it looks kind of nice if you just do little dots of white. It just adds a little something to the butterfly. Just another layer. Gives it a little bit of dimension too. You could also use, I also sometimes use, I really like these enamel accents by Ranger. They're nice. They come in black and white, and they're great for just adding some dimension and a little extra something to the card. So that's that. Like I said, I'll finish coloring it, doing the same thing. I'll do the rest of the wing, and I'll cut it out and show it to you so you can see the finished product. If you have any questions, just let me know. I'm going to link to the different markers and the stamp and everything that I use below, and I hope you liked it.